What is going on, crypto peeps? Welcome back to the Traveling Crypto. So last night, West Coast time in the US, there was an interesting phenomenon that occurred, and it was basically this candle right here. Look at this wick right here on BTC USD. And that was caused, there was a spike, and people, if you look on crypto Twitter or even on our Discord, people were freaking out that, you know, this was the bull run that was impending, and this is going to cause a snowball effect, which then in turn would force a short squeeze. If you look at the BTC USD shorts here, and for those of you that don't know what a short squeeze is, I'll explain it in very simple terms in a second. But last night, there was a lot of, I guess, positive panic about BTC prices and crypto prices in general. There were a few coins that did see a spike yesterday, Nano being one of them. I think WTC being another one. However, if you look, it was short-lived, and the reason is because BitMEX was down, but it was down not unexpectedly. It was down because of a scheduled maintenance. So that is what caused this spike. Now, let's talk about short squeezes for a second. If you look at the shorts here, this is tied to the Bitfinex short contracts. You'll see that the shorts that we have now are very similar to the all-time high that we saw back here in April, around April 12th. And a short squeeze is basically when you have so many short contracts and there's a spike in the underlying asset of that short contract. Those short positions tend to close because the price is now rallying. But the further that the price rallies, the more either the exchange is liquidating these shorts, or the short sellers themselves are closing these contracts on their own because they don't want to bleed money. And the more that happens, the more that drives the price of Bitcoin up. Because essentially what happens when you close a short, you have to buy Bitcoin or whatever the underlying asset is in order to close that position. See, when you're short selling, you're essentially selling before you have the asset. You're selling at a given price, at the current price, if you open a short contract today. So if you open a short contract today, essentially you'd be selling at 64.33 with the hopes that if it goes down, you'll buy back at a lower price. So in order for short positions to close, Bitcoin has to be bought. So that is what a short squeeze is. So I'm going to lay out a couple of scenarios here. One of them is tied to the ETFs, unfortunately, which in my opinion is 100% bullshit. For those of us that have been in traditional markets for a long time, you know what an ETF is, but you also find it laughable that something like an ETF would have such a huge impact on a market. In the traditional markets, ETFs are just another method, another instrument of investing or trading in a certain asset class. But because crypto traders have recently learned what an ETF is, coupled with the fact that we see it, perpetuated on social media, on YouTube videos, even I've done videos on ETFs, but I want to let you know that from a practical fundamental standpoint, it's 100% bullshit that, the price or even the success of an underlying asset such as Bitcoin is tied to something as insignificant as an ETF. But anyway, so there is an ETF decision coming tomorrow, August 23rd, and that is a futures-backed ETF. It is not a Bitcoin-backed ETF, a physical-backed ETF, meaning the buying and selling of Bitcoin is not actually involved when you trade in this ETF. It's just futures. But if you guys remember back in 2017 when we thought that futures would be the game changer, right? Like wait until Bitcoin futures are approved on the CME or the CBOE. That's going to bring in the institutional money. That really didn't do shit, right? What did it do? Nothing. It actually gave traders a method of taking the opposite position, right? We see that we talk about manipulation all the time and how you can manipulate the Bitcoin prices through things like futures. Anyway, I think ETFs will be the same thing. I think that the hype around the ETFs will be short-lived, whether it is negative or positive, and we'll just, we'll cheer about it for some time. If it does actually get approved, then you'll see the price skyrocket. But it's not really, it shouldn't really have an effect on the long-term success of Bitcoin. Anyway, I digress. The ETF will undoubtedly and unfortunately have an effect on Bitcoin's price, whether we like it or not, just based off of the market sentiment. Looking at the shorts here, here's what a dream scenario would look like. A dream scenario would be if the ETF is actually approved and we have shorts at an all-time high here. But if we get an ETF approval tomorrow, that would drive Bitcoin's price up. If we can surpass 6,700, to the 6,800, 6,900 range and close above there with strong volume and strong momentum, then you'll start seeing a major short squeeze, and we might even get to higher levels such as 8,000. If you look back at when the shorts were at this rate here back in April 12th, we went from the low on this day was 6,750 and the high was at 8,100. So we jumped almost $1,400 in Bitcoin's price in one day. So that essentially, it could be a similar effect, or we could even see a more drastic price change because shorts are at an all-time high right here. So we'll see what happens. On the flip side, all right, here is the bearish scenario for Bitcoin looking at the 1 week chart, right? So if we go all the way back to 2011, end of 2011, you'll see that this right here was the uptrend line, right? Here is where we started a legitimate bear market, right? This was a period of mass sell-offs. Check out the volume right here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So there was sell-offs, weak momentum in price, well into 2014. Now we're in 2015, and here is where you see a period of capitulation, and you see another round of mass sell-offs here, right? And this is like a maximum sell-off point where bears have just been exhausted. And so then if now you draw a trend line extending out to today's prices, this is where we are currently. So what could happen, and here you'll see this period of capitulation. This lasted actually quite a long time, almost a year before we started rallying up again. So what could essentially happen is we could breach this support line again if the ETFs keep getting denied, and if there isn't a short squeeze, meaning if the price keeps declining and the short contracts actually keep winning, we could see a price decline. And over the somewhat long term, we could breach this support line, and the first level that we would target below support, obviously, I mean, we still have a way to go. We'd have to hit 6,000, then 5,800, then 5,000. But this is essentially a realistic possibility based on previous support and resistance levels, right? So you'll see here between the 3,700 and 4,600 range is where we could see a breach of this support line if and when it does happen. Again, I'm not saying this will happen, but we do have to lay out long-term bearish and bullish scenarios. Now, this again is tied to the shorts being at an all-time high. So if we get a rejection of the ETF decision and say that the price, the market reacts negatively to that, the price keeps declining, those short contracts that we saw at 6,700 or below are going to keep winning, right? Which would drive the price further down. Now, in reality, we don't see a level of sell-offs that we saw here. Like, look at these red volume bars. Look at this red volume bar. There are sell-offs, but it isn't anywhere near what we saw previously. So I don't really think that this scenario, it's not that it's not in play. It's that what is the most probable at the moment. I think that we will continue to bounce off of this support line, if anything. When it's breached, then we will start panicking. But, I don't, based on the volume, I don't feel like there is any immediate path to breaking the support and falling to this rectangular range right here. And for those asking whether they should short, I mean, you'd be brave to short at around support levels right now. I would not short in the low 6,000s, especially because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow with tomorrow's decision. So if you're gambling, you could do what you want. It's your money. But for me, I'm a trader, and I always like to find high reward, low risk situations. And I'm a big believer in smart money. Fine, if you want to gamble, it's your money by all means. But if you take a look at something like Nano, for instance, you could see that we are well within this ascending triangle range, and you can easily swing trade something like Nano or even something like XLM, where we see this long symmetrical triangle forming. If you want access to the trade alerts, link is in the description. Sign up if you want those. Anyway, that is it for this video. I hope you learned something. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit up the Discord if you want to ask me any questions. I'm always on there. Join the Patreon for the weekly crypto picks and the trade alerts. Stay safe out there. Peace.